Good afternoon. Please take your seats so that we can start. We want to try to finish on time. Thank you all for coming, and welcome to those of you watching the webcast. I think you already can see now the Mint meter, and if you can answer that question, you go to the website and you put that code, and let's see what word cloud comes. And then the next slide, when this is done, you can put some questions to the panel, which we will share and ask the distinguished panelists to answer. My name is Maher Nasser. I'm the director of the Outreach Division in the United Nations Department of Global Communications, and I'm very privileged and honored to moderate this panel on a topic that clearly is the topic of the hour: climate change, communities in action. By being here today in this panel, in the session, and also as reflected in the language that I saw in the draft declaration, you're an audience that does not need an introduction to climate, to how detrimental the impact of climate change has on the future of life on Earth. And I say life on Earth because it's detrimental impact not just for humans, but also for other species. And the importance of climate action. The Paris Agreement in 2015 and the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by world leaders also in 2015 outlined the way forward. But as we have heard from scientists and experts, and as reiterated by Secretary General Antonio Guterres multiple times, we need to scale up the level of ambition and actions to avoid the worst case scenarios. And here I'd like to use a quote from Sergio Vieira de Mello, former High Commissioner for Human Rights, former UN representative, special representative in Iraq. He was killed 19 August 2003 when the terrorist Al-Qaeda attacked the United Nations in Baghdad. Unless we aim for the seemingly unattainable, we risk settling for mediocrity. And I don't think anybody wants to settle for mediocrity. Anybody here would like to settle for mediocrity? So when we talk about raising the level of ambition for action, for determination, we should be guided by always aiming for the seemingly unattainable, because nothing is necessarily unattainable. We're less than 1 month away from the Secretary General's Climate Action Summit, where leaders of government, private sector, and others were invited to the United Nations by Secretary General Antonio Guterres not to come and make speeches, but to announce actions with a much greater level of ambition for climate action. Climate Action Summit 2019, a race we can win, a race we must win. We must redouble our efforts on sustainable development goals to be able to address the impact of climate change and to invigorate climate action. In line with the underlying principle of the Sustainable Development Goals of leaving no one behind, and as I heard earlier today from our colleague Chris Williams, leaving no place behind, climate action must be fair for all. It must support jobs and health and protect the most vulnerable. And many, if not all of these, start at the community level and local government. We have a great panel to discuss climate actions that communities and individuals can take. Before I go to the panel, I have a call to action to all of you. 4 days ago, on the 23rd of August, we started at the United Nations a 30-day countdown campaign push for something we started earlier in the year called Act Now. Make a difference, send a message. And you just Google Act Now, hashtag climate action now, and then you can join the campaign. The other point that I am happy to share with you today is an announcement made this morning at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The United Nations has opened additional places for civil society groups to participate in the 2019 Climate Action Summit in New York on the 23rd of September. This was done in recognition of the crucial role of civil society in driving forward urgent climate action. Successful applicants will join global leaders in the General Assembly at the United Nations headquarters in New York, as well as working meetings across the summit's key action areas to be held on September 21st and September 22nd. These places are in addition to more than 200 invitations that were already being issued to civil society representatives, including over 100 youth representatives who were the winners of what was called the green tickets. More than 600 young people will also participate in the Secretary General's Youth Climate Summit at UN headquarters on September 21st. The announcement is being made in conjunction with our conference, and that was stated at the press conference this morning, the 68th United Nations Civil Society Conference being held here in Salt Lake City. UN Secretary General's envoy for Climate Action Summit, Luis Alfonso de Alba, said that the UN was responding to the overwhelming demand for increased participation from civil society, and this is in line with what we're doing here. With carbon, and I quote, "With carbon pollution increasing and the global thermometer rising, we are seeing the impacts of climate change getting worse every day, causing huge damage to people, communities, and ecosystems everywhere. But the movement to tackle climate change is gaining momentum as people and organizations everywhere are demanding action. The Climate Action Summit will be a moment for civil society to join with world leaders from across government and politics to push climate action into a higher gear. The voices, solutions, and engagement of civil society are more vital than ever. Civil society groups in all countries and across all fields, we are working to drive forward positive climate action, and solutions are encouraged to apply for additional positions by submitting a short written submission by September 5th, and more details we will share with you on that. Now to our esteemed panel. I don't think I need to introduce you to the mayor. Mayor Jackie Piscopsy, the mayor of Salt Lake City, our generous and hospitable host. Next to Mayor Piscopsky is John Rigo. John is the Vice President for Sustainability as Sony Pictures, and he will also talk about the partnership we have had with them for many, many years. To John's left is Laura Tobin, media personality, TV hostess, travel blogger, and environmental enthusiast. And next is Luke Mullen. You saw Luke at the opening session, environmentalist, actor, and he is on Disney's Andy Mack, which films here in Salt Lake City. And then next to Luke, let me see, Olumide Idowu, co-founder, International Climate Change Development Initiative, ICCDI Africa, and his name on Twitter is Mr. Climate. And then last but not least, Selena Klim, youth delegate from the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and her Twitter says, "Small island girls with big dreams, be bold for change." I can share with you their Twitter handles, and please do engage and do use the hashtag climate action, climate change, and of course the conference hashtag as we move forward, because we want this conversation to have the biggest reach and impact. So now I turn to the panel. Mayor, this panel is about climate change and communities in action. You have been the leader of this city, and before that were also public servant in different capacities. Maybe you want to share with us some of the things that you have put to action and some of the things that you think can still be done for communities, cities, and local authorities.
Thank you. All right, there we go. Absolutely. So One, thank you for coming today and listening to this conversation and participating. I think this is really the issue of our time. And we know that this issue doesn't just stand alone, that equity is very intertwined with this discussion that we're having today. For me, as a mayor, I have been very fortunate to be working with a group of mayors from across this country, all of whom stood up together at the U.S. Conference of Mayors in 2016 when our new president had decided we were going to pull out of the Paris Climate Agreement, and regardless of party affiliation, the mayors had gathered very quickly and signed on to a resolution sending a clear message to the world that the U.S. was still in. And that was a very valuable moment for us as a country, because what that meant is, as mayors who are on the front lines of dealing with climate change and the impacts of climate change, now we're embracing the reality that we were kind of on our own and had to take action at the local level without the support of federal government. And we have been. I want you to be very clear about that. In this country, when I was in my 2016 year of being mayor, I was the 16th city in the country to commit to 100% renewable energy for my entire city. Yes. And my team and I, who some of I can see right here, my Director of Sustainability, Vicki Bennett, and Tyler Polson, who is just an amazing rock star in the world of negotiations, we were able to broker an unprecedented franchise agreement with our energy provider. And that led to enabling legislation that passed this year that would allow an entire community to flip a switch and go 100% renewable all at once. That enabling legislation was a very big win here in this state, because we don't always align on this issue. You know, I'm a very blue community in a very red state, yet we had the support because our energy provider was standing with us. And those conversations are extremely important in order for us to be successful as a country to do our part. We absolutely must bring our energy providers with us. The other piece to that is not just the renewable energy piece, but it's also building the infrastructure so we can go electric in our vehicles. And as a community, we have been working on that, and our energy provider is also doing some work there, putting in electric charging stations from Yellowstone to Disneyland and inside our national parks here, so that people can actually get around using electric vehicles. But we as a city have been doing that work as well, putting in charging stations every budget cycle to make sure that they are there, and working with our transit company to ensure that they are buying electric buses. And we have launched some of that work this year. So the work is very important. We have to come at this from multiple angles, and every community needs to rise up and do this work. As a chair of a joint venture that the mayors have been doing with the private sector has been rewarding, because we are not only measuring what's happening in cities, we are sharing best practices through that partnership. And that alliance is enabling many, many communities. So now you have well over 150 communities going 100% renewable by 2030 in the US. And now you have over 450 communities or cities who are doing the work that they need to do to be able to make that commitment. So we are on our way, and all since 2016.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe I'll just follow up with just a short question. Is there are people who might argue that the way to get things done, whether on climate or whether it can be on smoking or anything else, is regulation, whether at the national or local level. And some would say, no, leave it to the private sector, they'll manage it on their own. But I'm sure there's always, maybe it's an issue of a balance, and what level of balance at the local level, and is it the same at this national level?
You know, I would say that because the way power providers are structured in different parts of our country, we have to address this issue differently in different scenarios. So for us, we were able to work directly with our power provider and partner, and then go to the legislature for that enabling legislation as a team. In other parts of this country, though, energy is structured very differently, or a community controls their own power. And that, I think, makes it even easier, quite honestly, to go renewable. But it's not just power. You have to look at your buildings. You have to look at how buildings are being built. We have an affordable housing group here called the Give Group, who built the first net zero affordable housing in our city in just the last couple years. And they shared their model with other developers. They wanted other developers to see how they did it. They didn't see it as a competing issue. They saw it as, we are in this together and we want to share what we have learned, and we want you to follow our lead so that our buildings are cleaner. So there is a lot of policy work involved, but there is also a lot of innovation and creativity coming from the private sector that is helping us affect the change that we are looking for. And we need those partnerships. We want those partnerships, and we want the ideas, and we want to be able to help you promote those ideas.
Thank you. So John, Sony Pictures. I mean, you're in the entertainment business. You know, you can give a list of the films and the work, but you're the vice president for sustainability. And how and why and when did an entertainment company like Sony create a position of VP for sustainability, and what is entailed in your work? I mean, we work with you on advocating, and you helped us reach a wider audience on issues on the UN's agenda, whether the first collaboration we had with the film Angry Birds, and then the Smurfs, and now Angry Birds 2 and Action Now. But could you tell us more about the responsibility of entertainment companies and industry on sustainability and on the issue of climate?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you. First, thank you for inviting us and having us here, and thank you, Mayor. Love your city. When I first came in here, I was over at the Youth Hub, and I learned how to salsa dance for SDG number 3, which I thought was really exciting and a lot of fun to kick off the conference. I'm actually, because I think the mayor is incredible, so I have trouble following up on your great work. I'm actually going to walk over here. I'm actually going to ask Nabila to come up here and help me answer that question, if you don't mind.
Please.
I just saw Nabila give her first presentation about 2 hours ago, and it was fantastic. We were talking about very similar topics, so I thought it would be a great opportunity for her to come in and
Tell them who Nabila is.
Nabila is a student at De Montfort University in Leicester, UK. I work in the entertainment industry, as you mentioned, and we talk a lot about influencers. And of course, we all know we're all influencers. Take me, I'm an introvert. I like facts. I'd rather talk about policy and technological innovation than I would about many other things. And yet I can influence a good number of people. I have my family, I have my community, I have the work that I do, I have my friends. So that's, say 1 to 100. A lot of you out there influence a lot more people, say 1 to thousands, and that's an incredible multiplier. And if you talk to marketers, that's a multiplier to be valued. And it's the same regard here within climate change as we're trying to make a difference. And as we work on some of our campaigns, we think about how do you change people's behaviors? How do you get them involved in climate change? Some people change behaviors based on facts. Some people change behaviors based on who they're with. Some people just change behaviors based upon playfulness and fun. And then some change their behaviors on children and on what their children bring home and what they care about. I heard someone talk about a lot of the issues of the SDGs help define people's identity, and so change is really hard. But it's got to start somewhere. And so one of our recent campaigns was, again, using Angry Birds in this playful way that really appeals to the youth, to the children, and trying to get them engaged in what Maher was talking about before, the Act Now bot. And I think we have a video to play of it.
We're all in danger! We need to put aside our differences and work together.
I'm in. The birds and the pigs from the Angry Birds movie 2 are becoming frenemies in the important fight against climate change to protect our planet.
The United Nations has a plan to help the Earth, and they need all of our help before it's too late.
The Angry Birds Movie 2 is working with the United Nations on the Act Now campaign.
We need you to act now. Every choice we make matters.
Every action we take counts towards protecting our planet.
From the food you eat to the clothes you wear.
None of us wear pants!
How will you fight climate change?
Here are some ideas to get you started. Try meat-free meals, or eat more vegetables, nuts, and grains.
I eat dirt.
Reduce your electricity use. Unplug and spend time outside.
You are a hero.
Give your clothes a second chance. Use old clothes for new looks. Drive less, walk more, and take public transportation.
Hey, at least we're gonna get all our steps in today.
Recycle and reuse. Bring your own bags and use a reusable water bottle.
We died. It's kind of your fault.
Act now.
Actúa ya.
Act now for a happy planet. Take part in the global movement.
To save our world from being destroyed. What we really need is a hero.
Actually, that position's been filled. Oh, yeah!
Join the Angry Birds to make a difference.
Go to un.org/actnow today and choose your action.
Trust me, I know what I'm doing. Working with what we got.
Unite for a better world.
Now the campaign works off, thank you. Campaign works off the theme that Angry Birds and these green piggies, it's funny to say piggies at a UN event, but the green piggies are arch enemies if anybody's played the game. Well, in this movie, they actually have come together to defeat a larger force and a larger foe. A lot like what we all need to do in order to combat climate change. So I'm going to turn it over to Nabila now to take you through the campaign.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I just want to say, okay. I just want to say I'm really excited to be here and have this opportunity to speak to you all today. I'm a little bit nervous, so please bear with me. So what I'd like you all to do now is if you could take out your mobile phones, and we're all going to join the movement together, and we're going to act now together. So if you could grab your mobile phones, and I'd like you to search up un.org/act now. So if you could do that for me, please. Okay, and so what you're going to see is a page that tells you a little bit about how we all need to work together and how small changes can actually go a long way in us attacking the climate crisis that we've got right now. And what we're all going to do is, when we registered, we were all given a really nice reusable bottle, so we're going to act now and we're going to log an action to use our refillable, nice, beautiful little bottles that we got from the UN. So if you scroll down to the little tab that says refill and reuse. And just for argument's sake, we're going to say, tell me more. If you're not convinced yet as to why we need to refill and reuse our bottles, so if you press tell me more, and the bot generates some information and statistics just to let you know why we need to do this. And currently 1 million plastic bottles are purchased every minute and discarded, adding to over 300 million tons of plastic waste that pollutes our environment every year. And so this is why we need to refill and reuse our bottles. It's a small change that we can incorporate into our lives, but it's fairly effective. So if you just press act now, you've logged your action and you've worked together to attack climate change.
Thank you. Thank you,
very
Nabila.
much. Thank you.
Thank you, Nabila. Thank you, John. And just a question, John. How much did the UN pay you for this film?
Oh my goodness, we're getting into that. We do this obviously as a partner of the UN, and simply in acknowledgement that we all need to contribute and make a difference. And this is one of the ways we contribute. We have lots of plans around our operations, renewable energy, materials, procurement, but we are just pleased to be working in partnership with the UN, and so obviously do this as a partner.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
That means nothing.
And that's an example of another action that companies, whether in entertainment or otherwise, can also do. So, Laura, they both spoke about influencers and also the role of when you become more than just a private person and you have a much wider platform. You have chosen to be an environmentalist, and I know that you wanted to come here and give your statement.
Thank you, Maher. Yes. I'm a little tall, so. First of all, hello, dear Mayor of Salt Lake City. I feel like at home. Thank you for everything today. Excellencies, fellow youth, ladies and gentlemen, buenas tardes, hola. My name is Loretta Warren. I'm from Bogotá, Colombia, and it is such an honor to be here today. My home is burning. Did you know your home is burning too? For the last few weeks, the Amazon rainforest has been on fire. 20% of the oxygen we breathe is thanks to the Amazon. 34 million people, including 500 indigenous tribes, live in the lungs of the earth. No one knew this for over 16 days, and our animals and our trees had been turning into dust. I'm not an expert, I'm not a scientist, I have no political power, but what I do have is the willingness to use my social platform for good. I have always worked in the entertainment business, one that seems very far away from scenario like this. My social media community is mostly young women and girls who are leaders, who are independent, empowered. I want them to think and feel they can do anything if they decide to. I know they're watching, and I don't take that lightly. I am here because of them. I knew climate change was there. Even though we're suffering the consequences, it felt a bit distant. However, one day, I woke up in a city of crisis. My hometown, Bogotá, was so polluted that the government had to declare a state of emergency. For a day, we were not allowed to use our cars because the air was practically unbreathable. It felt thick. Massive gray clouds were floating upon us. I started questioning myself, as a young person, what can I do to help? Along with my family, we created Ética Verde Foundation, a nonprofit organization that contributes to the conservation of the cloud forest, also called water forest, in the Andean region of Colombia. The specific kind of forest plays a big role in the rain process, something that we have forgotten, just like the Amazon. Only 1% of the global woodland consists of cloud forests, but unfortunately, its existence has been threatened by mining and climate change. Besides my nonprofit, I understood that it was not enough, that I needed to adopt a more healthy lifestyle, a lifestyle that is more in line with sustainability and environmental protection. I decided to become more aware of my waste, more conscious about my decisions. Sadly, most of our everyday products are made out of plastic, in harming processes involving fossil carbon that takes hundreds of years to decompose. I decided to ban single plastic use, reusing my water bottle and taking plastic straws from my life completely. Livestock production represents high levels of carbon emission and increased deforestation. I changed my diet. I reduced the intake of red meat and dairy and migrated to a more sustainable way of eating, consuming local vegetables and fruits. But is it enough? Probably not. But that answer could completely change if millions of us were doing it systematically. Every single action counts. Maybe for you, the change begins with creating a nonprofit, as it did for me. Maybe it's carrying your bottled water everywhere and walking to work to reduce your carbon footprint. Maybe it's changing from a plastic toothbrush to one of a bamboo. It gives me such hope that young people in this conference are pledging to end the climate crisis in the Salt Lake City Youth Climate Compact. It will serve a bedrock for the upcoming Climate Action Summit. And here is my climate pledge for you all. I came here to learn and to share with my Latin American community your amazing initiatives. I want to show everyone what you are doing. We need to get information flowing. I wanted to offer my platform to communicate specific solutions because we have the responsibility to heal the earth. Thank you so much. Gracias a todos. Thank you, Maher.
Thank you, Laura. You gave a number of examples what individuals can do as also young people. One of the things that I wanted to ask and follow up is also young people aren't always participating in political processes. If you look at participation in elections and in democratic processes, you see that usually older people vote more, higher percentage than young people, and that maybe part of the responsibility. You want to maybe reflect some on that?
I think young people don't know what to do in this situation. I think they're pretty lost. And you know, I have to be completely honest. At some point, I was totally lost too. I didn't know what to do. What can I do to help? Do I have to be in a political charge? Do I have to be in a social organization? What can I do? And this is what social media is about. This is what influencers are about. Luke and I, being public figures, we have the responsibility to tell all of our followers, all of the people that just are passionate about what we do, we have the responsibility to tell them that they can do something else about the plastics, about the meat, about the recycling. There's so many things they can do. So I think nowadays, these kind of spaces, they are amazing. Thank you so much for having us. I mean, it's the first time I think Colombia is having this crisis, and right now I'm like begging you to help us. Please donate the Amazon. We're in a middle crisis right now. Everybody's like obsessed because the oxygen we breathe right now is that oxygen that comes from the Amazon. So thank you, Maher, so much for this invitation. I hope everybody can look around what's going on right now at the Amazon in Brazil, Bolivia, Colombia. It's a terrible thing, and I know we as influencers can do something about it, so please, let's act now.
Thank you. So, Luke, you spoke yesterday at the opening session, and we've had a brief chat. And I mean, you're still in high school. You're an actor, and now you're getting on the world stage. What got you interested, and how did you become a climate activist, as you describe yourself? And what message do you give to fellow actors or people on a similar position that can definitely influence more than just their immediate family and neighborhood?
Yeah, well, thank you for letting me be a part of this panel. I'm really honored to be up here with you guys. Climate change, or as it should be referred to, the climate crisis, affects us all, but it's really the young generation that we are going to see the biggest effects of climate change. Obviously, we're already seeing some of the effects now, but it's only going to worsen if we don't take action. I think a lot of us are in this paralysis. We don't know what to do, and I think a lot of times it feels really daunting just reading the news articles. I know for me, I can't handle watching the news, and I care so strongly about this. So having a platform has really allowed me to connect with this younger generation who are in this same paralysis. We don't know what to do. So what I have tried to do is use my platform to tailor awareness and tailor these messages to the younger generation to tell them what we can do. Climate change is the defining issue of our generation, and to answer your question, that's you don't have to be educated to take an interest in this. I read one news article and I was hooked. I realized this was the biggest issue that I have to be a part of. I have to do everything possible to be a part of this. So having the platform, it's allowed me the opportunity to outreach and to really connect with the younger generation who are asking, what should I be doing? Mm-hmm. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to give a list of what we can do. We can give up meat. We can reduce our plastic. We can drive less. There's so much that we can do. But this new generation, my generation, we are getting so involved, and this movement is growing. And really, we're going to be out there doing this with or without your help. We really need your help, but we're going to be out there with or without it. So I think that if we can all come together, not just the youth, I don't want to just say this is a youth issue. I want to say this is everyone's issue. And obviously, this movement is focused mainly on youth, and especially the youth summit that is happening this September is so important. But that's what's important about it, is that we can all come together to create these solutions. So also to answer the question, being an actor in the entertainment industry, I think we have a great way to reach a larger portion of people that might not have taken interest in this issue. And it is a responsibility. I think if you have a platform, you have to be using it. We have to come together right now. This is the defining moment of our generation. So I'm trying to do everything I can, but I don't know if it's enough. But that isn't stopping me, and it shouldn't stop you. I know it's very daunting. But if you have a platform, and I know that a lot of my friends are taking interest in it now as well, I think that's what we have to do. We have to do everything we can, because there's no wrong answer here. The right answer is we have to come together and make change, and that's what we've been doing. And I think social media is a great way to make change. We've seen that these strikes, these school strikes, they've been spread all across social media, and I've tried to spread my support of it and join some of these strikes. But they're making real impacts. In Germany, they said that they're cutting out all their coal in the next 20 years. And in Germany, we've seen a spike of these strikes. So you can see this correlation between this youth motivation and this youth really fear of what for their future. But as I said before, there's no wrong answer. We have to come together now, and every tool, such as social media, can be used to bring people together. So if you have a platform, please use it. And anything that we are saying on our platforms, please listen to. There's so much we can do right now, but the main thing we have to do is come together to form these solutions and create individual actions that make a real impact. So, thank you.
Thank you, Luke. When I was looking at the word cloud, the word that was in the middle that I think you contributed was education. And yet when young people, and it started the Greta Thunberg in Sweden and many followed, what they decided to do was go on strike from school. And can you maybe comment on that? I mean, education, but what kind of education?
Right. I was given the opportunity to take an APES class, AP Environmental Science, in my freshman year. And I think that really opened up a lot of new ways of looking at this climate crisis. I think education is one of the most important ways, alongside outreach through social media. I think it's one of the greatest ways that our generation is learning about what is truly happening out there. So along the lines of the strike, I do believe that the strikes for their climate are just as important as education. Why should we, be studying and preparing for a future that might not come? So that is why Greta's message is so important. Why are we, sitting in a classroom preparing the next 12 years of our lives when in 11 years it may come to an end? So really, I think that joining these strikes along with education, I think these can happen simultaneously. I don't think it has to be one education, one strike. I think these can happen simultaneously, so we learn what is happening, but we also implement change. So we also are out there striking, and we're out there fighting for our future that we learned about in class. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think I want to thank Scott Carlin for actually putting together this incredible panel, but also to making sure that on the panel we're not only people from North America and South America, but also from other continents, and also that this is a global issue. So we have Olumide, he's from Nigeria, and he created and co-founder of the International Climate Change Development Initiative. And what we also must recognize and realize that according to UN reports is that the biggest impact of climate is on countries and people who had not been part of the problem, because they are still developing economies and they did not contribute to the carbon emissions and methane emissions and all the greenhouse gases. So tell us about the work and how you got into this, and what are your suggested actions that we can take from this panel forward?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me first of all appreciate the mayor. Thanks for the invite. Thanks to United Nations. Thanks to my colleague and to everybody. Yeah, let me start by saying that climate change is a time bomb. And if we don't take urgent actions now, every one of us will feel the impact. I'm from Africa, I'm from Nigeria, and I'm very, very sure everybody knows Nigeria. And let me start talking about the very big issue we're having from the northern part, which is the desert encroachment. We have some part of the country that we are facing the oil spillage, and we have some part of the country that are facing the flooding and the waste management. I can tell you today that most especially when people talk about education and climate change, I always tell people that even some of us don't know what climate change is all about. So how do you want to tell people to take action? So my contribution or my conclusion is that we need to start going local. We need to start doing a lot of on-ground work to let people understand that this issue of climate change, I don't tell people about climate, I tell them about environmental problem. From there, you start helping them to understand the word climate change. And from the question you asked, how I started, I think I just have this interest in environmental issues. I remember back then when I was in university, I don't know whether anybody knows an organization called ISEC. I was a founding coordinator in my university, whereby all what we do is just to see how we can groom young leaders, how we can make people understand that they can also do something for themselves. And my point was to talk about environmental issues, and that's how I started. But my point now today is that from 2011 up to now, everything I've been doing has been telling everybody about the impact. What are the things that you need to do to make sure you get all this? A lot of things is happening in the world. A lot of things is going on everywhere. We can see that if you look at climate change and conflict, we can talk more about that in my country. You see where the kidnapped girls, the herdsmen, a lot of those things are happening. And I brought down that to the political issues, climate politics. We need to also look into our leaders. When you sign an agreement, in also countries you go to, you come back home, but you don't implement those agreements. That is another problem. And those things are things that people will be looking forward to make you accountable. And we'll talk about accountability and transparency. When you look at climate change issue in my country, it's something that's very, very powerful. And we need to start looking at how can I take my own responsibility by adding that little values that can change things. One of the things I tell people to do is to start looking at how you can tell the next person sitting there beside you that that's sachet that you throw out, do you know what it's going to cost you in the next 10 years? Start telling people, what do you think is going to happen to you when you throw that plastic bottle away? What is going to happen to you when you start wasting food? That's another thing that people don't need to look into. Like in this country, go back to the where we just finished lunch, you see a lot of waste. I don't know what's going to happen to those waste, but the bottom line is that we need to start taking action whereby everybody needs to understand that climate change is real. Like I said when I started, it is a time bomb. We just see Amazon. I give you, in the next couple of months, we start seeing a lot of issues that will start coming up. And when this thing starts escalating, none of us know where to run to. We will start seeing that it started having the effect. So I urge you, everybody, let us start telling ourselves. Let's tell our neighbor. Let us make them to understand that the issue of climate change is not about talking, but about taking action. About telling everybody, you don't need to go far. Start from your immediate family. Start from your friends. Then you'll be able to make more impact. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olumide. I mean, you describe yourself as somebody engaged in social storytelling, and I think we heard in the previous panels that facts don't always change people's minds. I have actually seen research that stories do, that many people, and how can we better use storytelling to impact and influence the issues that we think are important?
Okay, so let me quickly give you a very, what we started doing when we started the organization. So I don't know whether anybody know what they call Climate Wednesday. So we decided to use this platform to make young people to, talk about what they feel and what they think they want to change. And we started using that as an impact conversation. We started using it as making people to understand that I'm not really talking about young people now. I'm talking about everybody, because the platform, it makes everybody to express their words, what they want people to listen to. And when you look at storytelling, there are different kinds of platforms you can use to tell a story. I tell people that 1 minute video can change people's life. Like the video we just finished, like the one we watched just now, you can see I was just telling him now that like seriously, we're supposed to be in this video so that we can tell more stories, So it's something that every one of us need to start doing. Look at the journalists. They are doing fantastic work by telling the world the problems that we are facing. They are telling the world how we can also change our mind towards the issue of climate change. So storytelling is a very big tool whereby we can use to make impacts, and we can also use it to, to account for our, to do transparency and accountability towards our politicians, because they are decision makers. We need to let them understand that things are actually happening on the ground. And I will stop by saying, when two elephants are fighting, it's the grass that suffer. So we are the grass now, and those people are just there spending, enjoying, and making things for them. So storytelling, by the time they see it in pictures, in cartoons, they'll be able to understand that actually these guys are facing a lot of problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Selena is from the Marshall Islands, and for those of you who follow the climate debate and know that small island states, the member states in the United Nations, are some of the most active on this issue, because it is an issue of survival. It is detrimental to their future. Should sea levels rise, and the projections are, if we continue on this trajectory, they will, some of those countries will no longer exist. So Selena, you're young youth delegate to the UN, and you have been involved in preparations for the Climate Action Summit, I believe. So maybe tell us a little bit what got you into this, a small island girl with big dreams, and how can other people follow your example. You want to come here? Please.
Yakoy everyone. Good afternoon. Mugdada iganan kamolo li roja meroja lang kan mura medjamor. My name is Selena Lam, and I am from the Marshall Islands. The Marshall Islands is made up of 34 atolls and islands. We are just in between Hawaii and Australia. And many of the islands are not even a meter above sea level. Allow me to set the tone. If the world continues at the rate that it is going, with all the carbon emissions that we are emitting, we have only 11 years left till we surpass the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. For those who do not know, this number is the number that island nations fought so hard as we are in the forefront of this existential crisis to be in the Paris Agreement that happened back in 2015. Anything beyond this number is too dire for our homes. I mean, not that it already isn't. When I first started talking about climate change at the age of 17, I would say 2050 is the year scientists predicted that my home would disappear. It is 2019 now, plus the 11 years. That is 2030. 2030. Please take a moment to absorb these numbers. 2 decades less is what we have. Growing up on the islands, it is inevitable that your house would be just steps away from the water. I would find myself standing in the middle of the road, and I see the ocean, and I see the lagoon on either side of me. And I grew up with my grandparents witnessing every year king tide seasons that caused water inundations to rush through the island. Houses, graves, and seawalls were broken. Seawalls that were to be built again as soon as the tides were low. Couple days later, you see the vegetation on the island turn brown, dying. The salt water had ruined the already poor soil. There were times I woke up with water gushing into my room. I zapped awake, taking the blanket I shared with my siblings on the floor and put it on the laundry baskets, along with our school supplies that we had left on the floor. We once had rented a hotel room as we were advised to go inland and on higher grounds. My grandfather sent us kids with our grandmother because he wanted to stay behind to ensure that nothing happened to the house. How he was going to do that with the incoming waves, I do not know. A few years back, Mama, the kids, and I had to go sleep at the Mormon church because we had been warned in the radio of higher flooding. This is a really dramatic picture, but I remember looking back at our house with no lights on, covered in the shadows of the night, my tears overflowing in my eyes as I fought the urge to break down. God, is this practice? Will it hurt this much when we might have to leave forever? What to do, Father? I was unable to sleep that night. If I was determined before, I was more resolute that I will communicate this throughout the world, for home needs saving. We are saving it, and the world, you inside this room, are obligated to help us as well. I am not alone as a climate warrior. All across the Pacific, climate warriors have mobilized themselves on the grassroots and an international stage to ensure our needs are heard and catered to action. When I went home during the summer of 2016, I went on a trip with the Marshall Islands Marine Resources and Authority team to collaborate with locals, religious, and traditional leaders of the atoll of Adon. In the neighboring islands, they retain the traditional ways of living. They live with their environment. We asked what changes they notice in their environment, what fishes are no longer abundant, are they receiving as much rain, at what time of the year is this and that supposed to happen. The Mimura team makes regular trips to neighboring islands throughout the year to take note of the changes, help explain to these people why it might be, because majority of the neighboring islands do not have access to the internet, and getting cellular signal is very difficult. I remember at one point I was visiting another island, and to call my family, I had to ask one of the men to climb a coconut tree by the ocean side, holding my phone up just to get signal. It is also here I noticed batteries of solar panels discarded on the beach and around the island. The Marshall Islands, while groundbreaking and solarizing all the neighboring islands, we had overlooked what we do with the batteries after they are used up. The elders shared they do not know how to properly dispose of them. And us in the capital island do not have the technology to do so. It is through working with local leaders, those on the ground, that we really see the loopholes, what is and what is not being addressed. Because there is only so much that we can do. While steps are being taken with local governments, traditional and religious leaders, there is more that our country needs to do. We struggle with implementing, and a big part of that is we do not have all the resources, nor do we have the expertise. So sharing planning expertise would really help us a lot. We have plans on expanding and raising the islands. We have a mountain of trash that many are saying is now the highest point in the Marshall Islands, that we are still trying to figure out what to do with. Like many vulnerable communities and nations, we are a resilient lot. We are empowered to act for the best of our people and for the best of the world. We are seeing and experiencing the consequences of climate change and other environmental issues, and we act. Along with you and along with the rest of the world. Thank you, and komoltada.
Thank you, Selena. Now, we had eyewitness account from a nation or a people directly impacted in a way that you probably have not envisaged. Selena, what would you like to see as actions adopted or presented? You can use the microphone at the Climate Action Summit next week that addresses the plight of small island states and island people.
Like many of my colleagues upstage have shared, there are so many individual actions that we can take, but then in the end, the action needs to come from up there. The leaders, the 1%, or maybe even less than 1% of the people who hold the power, the influence, and the money in the world. The action needs to come from them. And this question was asked previously in another conference, and I had said, what we need and what we demand is already out there. The solutions are there. You will see all the youths that are being mobilized all over the world, and they are demanding that this be done and that be done. It's already there. The action just needs to come from there, and I encourage that we demand that our leaders be bold, be ambitious. They already have solutions that they've put out, but they're not that ambitious enough. It is really not enough. At least in my case, in my country's case, and the island nation's case, and the other vulnerable nations and communities. Thank you.
Thank you. So I see tons of questions going up the screen, but I actually want to give the opportunity first to you in the audience. There are 2 microphones lined up here. If you want to ask a question, please take a place, and then we'll take a couple of questions, and then we'll have some comments. And then if you don't want to ask questions from the floor, I'll read questions from the screen. So we'll start with the right side here. Please introduce yourself and be brief if you want. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, hi, my name is Claire Nelson. The Act Now campaign is cool, but it focuses too much on individual action. What is Sony doing to combat the climate crisis? I have a couple of suggestions. Perhaps you could donate to helping extinguish the Amazon fires. I mean, it'd probably distract people from Spider-Man.
Thank you. We'll take a question from the other side, and we'll get to them. Please.
Hi, my name is Denise DeVank. And Mayor Brooks-Kripsky, I hope I pronounced that correctly. I wish you were running again. Thank you for fighting the inland port pollution. Secondly, I run a school of permaculture. When I learned how simple it is to just understand that the life support system of this planet, the way it was designed, is so perfect. It controls the cooling mechanisms of the planet, it controls the hydrology cycle. All the science is there. In every country, it's there. Why then are we not learning this at universities? We need to teach how to put ecosystems back together. Small projects. The UN has spoken to Greta. They've spoken to the man who planted 1 million trees. So many people in the Amazon, a couple planted 2 million trees, all by themselves on the land they owned. What it does is it brings back 25% more rain. They've done it in Indonesia where we've clear-cutted all their forests for our palm oil, which is in all our products here in America. All of us can stop buying products. You have more power to shut down a corporation with your purse than anybody else.
Thank you.
Don't buy the products, just like electric vehicles. But Mayor, I've had a heck of a time running to my charge station because there aren't enough in Salt Lake. We are so limited, and the Transportation Department and the Sustainability Department of Salt Lake City has not been much help to us, though we are the pioneers driving electric cars, trying not to pollute the air, trying to make a difference, inviting all our friends on our platforms. Please help us to connect more with you. May I have an appointment with you before you leave office?
Thank you. No, please. Do you want it? Okay, please, Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, the city is kind of on our own doing the infrastructure for the charging stations, and I'm getting it in my budget as quickly as I can, but we are also trying to make sure that we are providing more transit opportunities than what was previous to my administration. That is now happening. We find, that was launched just this month. High-frequency routes, buses that are electric, things that have not existed in our city before. So we're moving as quickly as we can as a small individual community, but we're also bringing other communities along with us. And you see changes happening in Park City and Summit County and Moab and others that you will see in the near future doing this work as well. So we're trying to help, and my team has been educating different cities all along the way and bringing them into the room to have these discussions because they don't have experts like we do. And the state government is not involved. So we are working as fast as we can. The state is now doing some things this year that are really new to us, and we're excited about that. But these charging station ideas, that's not part of what will be happening. So we have a lot of work to do. There's no doubt about it, but we are leading and we have partners that are joining the force. And what is going to be happening in Utah over the next year is unheard of in the entire country, and you will see that by the end of 2019. So we're very excited about what's happening and evolving, but we do have a long way to go. And I will challenge everyone in this room. If you heard the water bottle or the plastic bottle comment, challenge yourself to stop buying plastic bottles and products inside of plastic bottles. You can do it, and we need you to do it. And it is a very simple thing that all of us can take action on.
Thank you, Mary. John, since you want to take that one.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. In 2010, Sony launched something called the Road to Zero. It's a plan that actually gets us to a zero environmental footprint by 2050, and we were one of the first corporations to have it be approved by the Science Based Goals organization, which requires us every 5 years to relook at our objectives, our targets, our goals, and realign them with science. Everything for us is very much based on the most recent research that's coming out of the UN, IPCC reports, UNFCCC, and focuses on across all of our phases of our operations, from procurement and supply chain, site operations, design and production of our products, take back of our products and our responsibility, and our relationship with our consumers to also help them become more sustainable. Happy to talk about it further at a later point. One of our real focuses right now is renewable energy, part of the RE100 group, and really believe that one of the best things which all of us can do is to look at our energy footprint and proceed as quickly as possible to 100% renewable.
Thank you, John. We'll take a few more questions. Please start.
My name's Neldon Hamblin. I'm 20 and I go to Weber State here in Ogden, Utah. I was just wondering, I'm really interested in climate science and I want to go into that for my career, and I've been involved in several environmental issues throughout my life. But I've always encountered the same questions where people would rather focus on their preconceived notions about the climate change rather than the actual facts or anything behind that. Do you think that there's a way we can convince them of the actual dangers of this in a non-combative way, or is the only way to kind of be like, hey, here's what's happening, here are the issues, this is what we need to be doing? Something like that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple of questions and then we'll...
Hi,
yeah, please.
My name is Sean Walaude and I'm an MBA student at MCNY, New York. I have a few questions on climate change. There's actually a recent report that the poorest are likely to face a big disaster in the unforeseen climate change issues in the future that we are yet to see. So I'd like to know what the climate change leaders are doing, what are the response in place as against unforeseen climate disaster that we're yet to see. Countries like Haiti, Nigeria, Philippines, who are kind of terrorized with different disaster in terms of mismanagement, corruptions. The poor are likely to suffer major of all these changes that we're yet to see. So I'd like to see what climate change leaders are doing as a result, and also what they're putting in place in response to what we are yet to see to come as a result of changes in climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to take the first one? Please.
Okay. Let me start from me.
Sure.
Okay. So just a little contribution I have for him is I think one of the ways we need to start telling people, I'm not a scientist, but I think we need to go local, like I said. It's something that we need to start using what we have in our community to explain to people the impact of climate change. With that, people will be able to understand. But because by the time you start telling them the big words, they will not be able to comprehend. They will not even understand what you're talking about. So, and every individual have the way they learn and how they adopt everything they tell them. So it's better for us to start looking at how we can tell them using our own, local resources to talk to them. And let me quickly go back to my brother from Nigeria. I want to use a very good example. I started going to COP. It has been long I've been going to COP. And I want to talk particularly about the NDCs. If you look at Nigerian NDC, I'm privileged to also go through both the NDC implementation and even linking up to the Green Bond. If you look back very well, our thematic area, we talked about transportation, we talk about renewable energy, but what has been happening to our NDCs? Nothing. If you look at that, you'll be able to understand that we've been ready for the impact of what is going to happen in future. is something that is a question to our leaders. Like my sister said, they have much work to do. So my question back to you is that we need to start telling our leaders, forcing them to start implementing those ideas, start implementing those so-called Paris Agreement they signed to. Some of them signed this agreement and nothing happens back home. So it's high time for us as young people, as civil society, as individually, let's start telling them it is high time we need to change this idea of you being signing a document and not even implementing it back home. So it's something that is eating deep into the system, and we need to talk about it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Selena?
I just want to answer our friend's question from this side. So I'm not exactly sure what you meant by preconceived notion, but just an example from the Marshall Islands, what is happening there is we have, even with the effects of climate change that we are facing, we have people who do not believe in climate change. And what we always encourage is to localize the language, speak in the language that they would be able to relate to more. So for example, our religious people, because the Marshall Islands is extremely religious, and when we see all these things that are happening around us, it reminds of the book of Revelation, all the bad things that are going to happen when the world is coming to an end. And so our people see what is happening and they think, okay, the world is coming to an end. The solution to this is to turn to God and give our life to Him so we can live in paradise. So how we communicate with it, because most often science denies what religion is saying and religion denies science. And so we speak to them with Bible scriptures. We say, why did God put Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden? Was it to destroy it or to protect it? And so when you give these examples and you speak with them in stories and words that they'll be able to understand, it hits them more than me just going and spouting all these datas and numbers that scientists are putting out. And so it makes them act more because that's where they are bound to and they relate to more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the things that is out there, there is information that is being tracked all over the world. So regardless of where you are from, there is data. But specifically in Utah, there is a network of people who are working together, and they are collecting this data regularly and updating it. And you're welcome to reach out to my Department of Sustainability to find more information about that. But in Utah, we are warming at twice the global rate. We lose snowpack every year. In the last 20 years, we've lost 5 weeks of snowpack. Snowpack is our water. It is our resource. It's our aquifer. And I have a city of 220,000 people, but I'm responsible for giving and providing water for over 1 million people. So imagine how I feel as a mayor as I'm watching what's happening in our snowpack just in the last 2 decades. Things are moving very quickly. We have people who want to challenge the notion, but you can see what is happening with our water and the cost of water. You can see what's happening in our snowpack. You can see it in our air. If they don't believe climate change is happening, they certainly can believe that our air is making it hard to breathe. The same things that are causing climate change are creating our air pollution. So for us in Utah, there isn't time for the naysayer. We absolutely all know we need to clear the air, and it is the same issues that need to be addressed.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just may want to add to that, that from what we know, the science is clear. I don't think that the so-called the scientists are divided when 0.5% is saying one thing and 95.5% is saying another. If you want to side with the 0.5%, good luck to you. We accept science when it creates something that's useful, and we said this is the creation of science. But the science and the data that shows that the emissions and the carbon concentration in the air is the highest it has ever been since the Industrial Revolution started, and we have ways to measure that. And I think we have to believe in the science that got us here as humanity, that is telling us we need to take action. And action is possible, and I give you the example of the ozone layer. In the early 80s, everybody was worried about the ozone layer and the ozone hole that is growing and that we're doomed. We're all gonna get skin cancer, and there's no solution because we need the aerosols, we need the hydrofluorocarbons used in refrigeration and the rest of it. But then there was the Montreal Protocols, and member states and the industry got together in the mid-80s, and they signed those protocols, and today, science is telling us the ozone hole is healing, and that was concerted action that combined regulation by governments and follow up by industry and by scientists who identified alternative substances. And now we know renewable energy is the alternative to fossil fuel. So we have examples to follow, and we have success stories. So I think to say that we're doomed is an invitation to accept the worst case scenario. And I don't think, as I said, we don't settle for mediocrity. We shouldn't settle for mediocrity. So let's give you all the floor, but if you can be brief, tell your question, and because I know I'm conscious we only have 9 minutes left, and we don't want to spill over. So quickly, one-on-one, and then we'll take you all, and then we'll see if we can take you all. Please.
Yes, hi, my name is Chris Newhart. I'm a journalist and aspiring social media influencer, and this question is to anyone that wants to answer it. What's some advice that you would give to people that are trying to follow in your footsteps and be more consciously aware of what we post and hashtag and geotag? You know, so many social media influencers always posting about what they're wearing or where they're at. You know, what's some advice that you give for us to post things that are more meaningful and to help, you know, get those messages out? Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
So my name is Chase Inegbedian, member of the Youth Subcommittee for the 68th UN Civil Society Conference. I'm also a climate reality leader and the founder of Apartment Africa. I would like to commend the influencers. Majorly, one of the tools Olumide spoke about is the Climate Wednesday, where this tool for Twitter has been able to rejuvenate people to understand why they should be involved in climate issues. Afterwards, when we did our climate reality leadership training, we saw the need to connect climate with menstrual health, where we can provide eco-friendly sanitary pads for people who don't have access to it. And I see it as a major need to work with the mayor of Salt Lake City to see what we can do in that line of making sure women's menstrual health are taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
I have one question for Luke, but before anything happens, and Mayor Biskupski can also chime in, I just want to say that the United States, and Utah in particular, is still and always will be strong because of our immigrants. So I know many of you are here from nations that may be in trouble, and just know that if worse comes to worse, our doors are open. And one question for Luke. Just that it's really hard to get over the apathy when our president has pulled out the Paris Climate Accord. What do you do personally to overcome that? Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Yes, my name is Chun. I'm coming with the Association of All Citizens. I'm honored to be here and very happy here. And just act right now, please. Say hi or I love you to each other, please. Right now, please. 1, 2, 3. I love you. Oh, yes.
Thank you.
So this message to give you all, and then I would like to ask, how about this promoting of pure heart with love to the whole world, and by the individual thing is go through our government and go through our every offices, many places. So it's very, very quickly by individual.
Thank you very much.
Yes, improvement of the climate change.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you. Please.
My name is René Triol from Universal Esperanto Association. Till now, I didn't hear any word about the carbon footprint of new technologies. I think 4% of the emissions coming from our smartphone and so on. So I should like to know who is ready to reduce his own use of smartphone, Facebook, Twitter, or similar things. Compared with aircraft carrying, only 2.8%.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're doing good. We have 5 minutes left and we have 5 people, so try to do it in 4 so that we can have maybe a final 5 minutes. Please.
My name is Josh Christensen. My question is this: how can we out-engineer climate change and involve the engineers and minds to be able to out-engineer this problem? Because current renewable energy solutions are expensive to implement and limited by battery technology.
Okay. Quick.
All right, my name is Dallin Christensen, and my question is for any of you who wants to answer, but the question is, I think we can all agree that climate change is not going to be solved if we don't have a cultural shift. Now, for me, that cultural shift, I started recycling because my mom taught me to, and I still recycle today because I've come to care about the environment. So my question is about how we can create that caring about the environment and other people to truly solve the climate crisis. So my question for all of you is, how do we plan, as the UN, as people across the world, on implementing that sort of a cultural shift? Does that start in the family? You guys mentioned influencers. Is that your plan? So that's my question.
Thank you. Please.
Oui, moi je vais parler en français, j'espère qu'il y aura un traducteur. Donc je voulais tout simplement dire pour le changement climatique,
I'm sorry, we don't have interpretation.
Thank you.
On the subject of climate change.
Oui, je voudrais seulement dire pour le changement climatique.
I would simply like to say on changing the climate change.
Que l'Afrique est en train de subir
that Africa is suffering consequences.
Oui, parce que nous assistons à la sécheresse, les inondations,
lots of flooding,
la déforestation aussi,
and
les arbres.
deforestation,
Voilà.
which is caused actually by other countries.
Donc, j'aimerais que les Nations Unies puissent penser à ces pays en voie de développement qui luttent aussi pour ce phénomène.
I would like the United Nations to deal with these problems.
Yes. Seulement le problème qui se passe quand les Nations Unies mettent en place des fonds pour pouvoir accompagner les pays en voie de développement, la société civile est mise de côté.
Okay, la société civile is.
La société civile.
Which is your country?
Oui, moi je représente la société civile.
So they're not included. It's the civil society and her group that she belongs to. When United Nations groups go to different events in Africa, they are not included. And that's something that I'm seeing a lot. If we're going to do this together as a world, then we need to include everybody.
Parce que c'est une question de volonté politique.
Can you please be brief because we have 2 people.
Political volunteering.
Donc ce que je pouvais suggérer dans le programme, que c'est qu'on accompagne l'Afrique, par exemple, à la construction des maisons en terre.
So, like construction of houses and things like that in Africa, the companies need to work together with the locals so they make better decisions.
Maisons écologiques équipées des énergies renouvelables.
All renewable and sustainable ways of doing things. And hydrology.
Parce que nous avons des fleuves.
Because they have floods.
Okay.
En Afrique, il y a le soleil, il y a le vent, il y a les cours. Donc même pour les femmes.
I'm sorry, but we have to take the other last 2, and I will not accept additional people. I'm sorry. We want to give the panel final say before let's just hear the last 2 questions, and then please, very, very brief.
Okay, my name is Nathan Hull, and my question is just, what can we expect impoverished and exploited communities to do, and how can we help them? Thank you.
Thank you.
How can we change the culture of what we're buying and the different corporations that we're supporting?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much. We've had like 15 questions, and I hope that you've remembered some of those that you want to answer.
I will
And-
have,
and
I
I
think
guess
we'll
I
all
will-
have some closing comments.
Exactly.
that
Just
we'll
final
cover.
closing thoughts, and if you can just touch on those issues, please.
So I know in Utah, we have the Utah Climate Action Network. This is a group of people who come from all sectors of this state and in the work that is involved in addressing climate change. So it's engineers, it's scientists, it's people who are in public policy, it's all of us. And if communities would create similar structures, it does help bring together the ideas that can be shared and implemented. And I know our structure, we are sharing the information that the experts are bringing to the table. So the quicker we can create these networks of people within our own communities, the quicker we can have results and see. The other thing is going back to, you absolutely have to put pressure on businesses and your politicians, your leaders, to do the right thing. And if you are not seeing that, then you absolutely have to use your voice, especially in this country where we have this freedom to vote, and we need to use that, and we need to be informed. We actually have to know not just that somebody wants to do something, but what is their plan? What is their strategy? We have addressed in my administration transportation, housing that is net zero. We've done 3 net zero city buildings. You know, we are working as fast and feverishly as we can, and at the end of the day, we have to have other leaders doing the exact same thing. So you must know who is leading, and you must know where they stand, and they must have plans. They can't just tell you, I'm going to move a power plant because I want to. It doesn't work that way. And one last thought is that people in poverty, women, are already behind the curveball in these climate change experiences, disasters, and storms, severe storms, because the way society is structured is already putting bias on us and our ability to have the same economic opportunities, the same ability to be able to get beyond social structures that have been in place for very long periods of time. We have to, as humans, rise up and help one another and acknowledge that we are in this together, and we absolutely have to own the social structures that are, quote, the norms that are not serving humanity well, and do something about them as we take action on climate change. We must address that.
Thank you, Mayor. John.
Sure. I'll try to, if I can remember, try to hit a couple of these. Carbon footprint of new technology, someone asked about that. Yeah, it's a great question. I think in the past, people haven't done a good job with that, right? You look at the iPhone as a perfect example, right? The iPhone was created without actually looking at system design and design for the environment. And they had to go back and think about how do we design it better so we can actually reuse some of the materials, and they've done a great job since then. But that was a couple years after it was launched and hundreds of millions sold. What's going on now is there's a lot more efforts on design for environment. So you're training old engineers how to do design for environment, and new engineers that are coming out of universities, so kudos to universities, are training people on how to design for the environment, where you're designing new technologies up front for how they can be used when they first come out, but also how can they be disassembled. Second, one of the other questions that was asked about a cultural shift, I thought it was a fascinating conversation. Yesterday, someone talked about policy and culture, and how people, politicians can create policy. Policy only gets you so far if culture isn't there to back it up. Recycling is an excellent example. There's many examples. But you can have recycling, and if no one recycles, it's a moot point. It's a hard thing to do, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've talked about a lot of the individual actions. Individual actions are not just about how do you create small actions to deal with a big problem. It's how do you create small actions and civic societies to support the policies that exist now and that we want to see in the future, because they complement each other.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Laura.
If I heard correctly, somebody asked us, what do we recommend all the people that follow us on social media to be part of the climate change action? And it's not that simple. There's so many people so confused with the information that is going around everywhere. There's so many children and there's so many kids that ask every day, what can I do to help? Where can I go? Do I have to go to a foundation organization? And what I think and what I recommend always in my social media, in my Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, everything I can have through social media is right now living all of this Amazon situation is plant a tree, donate. Look in the link of Act Now by UN. There's so many ways we can help right now, but through YouTube, for example, I can tell all the children and all my followers to maybe change their toothbrush to a bamboo toothbrush, not to intake so much meat, the plastic use metal straws, travel light. I mean, don't travel that much. Use your scooter, use your bike, stop using so much your car, etc., etc. There are small messages that we can bring to all the youth and all the community, all the youth community, is that well said? Sorry, this Spanglish. This youth community, and I think Luke does the same. I follow you, and I love all the messages you bring to all your followers. Is what I do. Obviously, right now, what Colombia needs the most is that the lungs of the earth come back to life. So if you can help me with that, please, that would be amazing.
Thank you.
And you guys too, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Just to follow up with that, I think a couple things. One, seeing the shift in our youth is amazing because for the first time we've really seen an increase on social media about our environment. Like the news outlets were not talking about the Amazon fire for 2 weeks until social media really brought it to light. So it is an incredible tool, and as she said before, I think we really need to encourage everyone to use it to spread awareness. More focused on your question, how do we cater? So something that I've really worked with over the years of having a social media is catering to my followers, and I'm sure a lot of you out there right now are wondering what I can do like on my social media to get that youth engagement. Something that you have to really think about is who's following you, first of all, and what other posts have they really engaged with. So what I've tried to do is I've realized that when I post a picture of a tree, it doesn't get as much engagement as a picture with me either speaking or with someone else speaking about the environment. So it's really catering towards what your audience is. That's one of the main things that I would stress on if you were wondering what you can do to spread the word of social media. It's really thinking about who your audience is and what you can do to tailor your message to them and what they really respond to well. One last thing, just to answer someone, I can't remember who asked it, but someone else's question up there about how I'm not filled with apathy. It's because I can't. I don't think we're in the spot right now to give up. We still have an opportunity to turn this around. We have obviously a very short window, but the one message and what I said in the opening plenary a lot and emphasized on is hope. The only way we're going to get anywhere is hope. And the message is lost if we're doing all this for absolutely no reward. So we have to stay hopeful because that's one of the main drivers of this movement is hope. I think that's what the youth really bring to this movement is their hope for their world, because it's the only thing we have in this fight. It's hope. And obviously with hope comes action and comes these solutions. So the first step obviously is to not succumb to the negativity. It's just to keep plugging away and keep having that hope.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me also start with the social media. I think one thing we should know is that You can't help somebody to, tell him not to post anything on social media. Everybody have their own way to manage their social media. One of the things I do mostly is that I don't just follow. I try to read what you do. I go through your profile and see what you do. But the bottom line is that it's an open space. So anything you want to use your social media to do is fine for you. But when we are talking about the issue on climate change, I think one of the tools, we need to start looking at messages that makes people to understand the impact of climate change, what they need to do, and actions that is going on around the world. And most of the time for me, I also use my social media not to call out the politicians, but to also send them the solutions. Okay, these are the things I think we need to start looking into, instead of having argument or conversation that doesn't drive to any conclusion. So those are the things I think we need to talk about. Like you said, hope, start talking about positive things, leave the negative part of it. Everybody that have solution to the Amazon problem today should start sending those messages. Like I said that before, storytelling is very good. One of the things we want to start doing now is start working with infographics. You can do a very simple pictures in infographic way and put it out there and people will understand what you are talking. And most especially, I think people always love seeing things in pictures than reading a lot of text. And if you can do a picture or cartoon that can make people to understand how to use those things on social media. Then let me talk about, somebody talks about engineering, There are a lot of, I remember some years back in Nigeria when we talk about the mining issues. Yeah, the mining issues. I think we need to start looking at how we can start using our profession to see the way we can use to solve climate change problem, rather than for us to be looking at how much am I getting from it. So the solution should come from within and using our profession. So I think how to get to the community, start looking at the tools that you can use to engage your community. If it is French they can speak French to them. If it is any kind of language, just use it to change their mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I know we've run out of above time, so maybe you can just be very brief, and then we have to end this because I know people have other commitments.
Okay, so very briefly, it's not just one individual. There's over 7 billion of us in this world. And what that one action that we're doing that contributes to this issue is being done by 2 billion people, 3 billion people all over the world. So combine all that energy together, the impact is staggering. So what you're doing individually can help influence others who will join the party. And then the solution and what will happen afterwards is what will really help us in this fight. So feel free to pull me over to discuss some of the questions that I'm not able to address right now, but let's keep doing what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give them a real warm applause. Great. And maybe we'll stand together and have a group photo if you want, and then thank you very much for being with us, and thank you to a great panel.